When Marcus returned to his late grandmother's house, he thought he was only there to pack up her things, but one locked drawer refused to stay silent. The house smelled like boiled chamomile and old wood polish, the kind of warmth that clung to sweaters and stayed in your hair long after you left. Marcus stood in the narrow hallway of his grandmother's cottage with a cardboard box and a knot in his throat. The clocks were still ticking, 3 of them, unsynchronized, so that the air had a layered heartbeat. Tick, 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 tick. Outside, rain stitched gray lines across the window panes, and the garden she'd worshipped all her life crouched under the weather like an old cat curling around its own absence. He had promised to clear the place when he was ready. Ready never came. Instead, there was the funeral, the quiet afterward, the phone calls about the estate, the lawyer's voice switching to condolences as if he were changing radio stations. Now it was just him and the house and the drawer that had occupied an entire corner of his childhood imagination. It belonged to a walnut writing desk parked under the bay window, his grandmother's command center. As a boy, he'd been allowed to fetch stamps, postcards, scissors, a miracle tin of rubber bands. Everything, except the top left drawer. Locked, she'd say with a soft smile. Some things must wait until the right hands are old enough to hold them. He'd laugh then. He wasn't laughing now. The desk looked smaller than he remembered, the varnish crazed into a map of tiny rivers. The lock glinted like a single eye. He ran his thumb over its cold brass and felt the old ache of wanting to know, the ache that had somehow grown up with him, been promoted to something like duty. He set the box on the floor and opened the other drawers first, the permitted ones. Receipts folded into origami cranes of worry. A crocheted bookmark that smelled faintly of lavender. Photographs, a beach, a boy with a red bucket that might have been him, a woman half-turned, laughing at whoever stood behind the camera. He frowned. The woman wasn't his grandmother. The boy wasn't quite him. Close, but skewed, like a dream that borrowed the furniture of memory and rearranged it. He slid the photo back, unsettled and slightly embarrassed by his own uncertainty. The house gave a little complaint, pipes or wind, then settled deeper into listening. On the desk sat a single envelope propped against the lamp, yellowed, the ink a faded violet. In her careful, schoolteacher hand, "For Marcus, when you're ready." He swallowed. The seal had been slit already, probably by the lawyer, but the letter was still inside, folded once. He slid it free. "My funny boy," it began. "If you're reading this, I have finally gone where the birds go at dusk. I'm not leaving you money, not in the way you expect. Don't roll your eyes. I can feel you rolling them. What I'm leaving you is a door. Your father never knew how to open it. Perhaps you will." His chest tightened. A door? He looked around reflexively, as if the room might tilt and reveal a secret passage, and then back to the one obvious door disguised as a drawer with a lock. The letter continued. "The key is always where you are sure it cannot be. Only a fool hides treasure under the lamp. Look beneath what held us together." He stood very still, listening to rain, to clocks, to his own pulse. Beneath what held us together. His gaze drifted to the desk's crossbar, the wooden strut that connected the legs. He reached under it, fingers brushing dust, a petrified breadcrumb, the smooth underside of wood, and then something rougher, a strip of old cloth, taped in place. He peeled it back, and a tiny brass key slid into his palm, no larger than a postage stamp, its teeth fine as the edge of a leaf. "Okay, babushka," he murmured, his voice thin in the humming room. "Okay." He noticed, as he straightened, that another photograph had slipped from the letter, paper thin and glossy. Not a photo. Exactly, a hospital wristband flattened between translucent tape. Patient, Hritsenko, N, male. Date, February 14th. Time, 3:27. The surname was his. The date, Valentine's, was his birthday. But the initial wasn't M for Marcus. It was N. A clock struck the top of the hour, and the 3 heartbeats tangled into a brief chime of dissonance. He set the band down like it might bruise and brought the key to the lock. The brass met brass with a nervous kiss. For a heartbeat, he thought of leaving it, for keeping the ache alive. And then the key turned, with a gentle, final click that sounded too loud in the room, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. The key turned with a soft metallic sigh, like a breath held for decades finally released. Marcus froze, half expecting the drawer to resist, to mock him with another lock within a lock. but it slid open smoothly, too smoothly, as if it had been waiting for that exact hand, that exact moment. Inside, everything was meticulously arranged. Nothing like the cluttered drawers she used to keep filled with half-finished crossword puzzles and dried rose petals. This one was deliberate. The first thing that caught his eye was a square of velvet, dark blue, folded like an offering. He hesitated, then unfolded it. A small silver locket rolled into his palm, its chain tangled, the surface tarnished with age. He pressed the latch. Inside were two tiny photographs, so faded the faces were almost ghosts. One was clearly his grandmother in her 20s, smiling with an intensity he'd never seen in her later years. The other, he frowned, was a young man in uniform, not his grandfather. The eyes were different, the smile shy instead of broad. On the back of the locket, barely legible, someone had scratched, "Until the snow stops." The phrase prickled him, oddly intimate, yet unfamiliar. He set the locket down and looked deeper. Beneath it lay a bundle of letters tied with a silk ribbon the color of old wine. The paper was brittle, the ink faded into the sepia tones of another lifetime. The first envelope was addressed to Nadia Hertsenko, his grandmother. But the return address made his pulse stumble. It wasn't local. It read, St. Clement's Sanatorium, Kiev region. And the signature beneath it, N. Hertsenko, the same initial as on the hospital band. He felt a chill trace the back of his neck. N. Hertsenko, same last name, same first initial. Another Hertsenko, writing from a sanatorium decades ago, to his grandmother. And she had kept the letters hidden all her life. He untied the ribbon carefully, but the moment the knot loosened, a faint smell of iodine and dust drifted out. A sterile, hospital scent that had no right to survive 50 years. The handwriting inside was elegant, almost too controlled, as if the writer feared his hands might betray him. My dearest Nadia, they tell me the winter here will not last forever, but the snow outside the window looks eternal. I see you when the light hits it, your reflection, your eyes. I dream of the house with the green shutters and the desk where you kept your letters. Tell me you still write, even if you never send them. Marcus stopped reading. The date on the letter, March 1971, long before his mother had even been born. The sanatorium's name nagged at him. He had heard it somewhere, maybe in a passing conversation, a documentary, or one of those local legends old people traded like currency. St. Clement's had closed in the 1980s after a fire, or was it an outbreak? He couldn't recall. He folded the letter back into its envelope, but something shifted beneath the stack. Another photograph had been tucked between the pages, smaller than a postcard, printed on thick, matte paper. It showed the same man from the locket, now older, standing in a hospital corridor in a threadbare coat. His expression was calm, but his eyes were the same, searching, waiting. Behind him, through a cracked door, Marcus could see what looked like a child's crib. There was handwriting along the bottom edge, half-smudged but still readable. Our son, February 14th. He froze. February 14th, his birthday. For a long time he just stared, the rain whispering against the windows, the clocks ticking out of rhythm. He felt the house lean in around him, listening. His grandmother had always told him his father left when he was 2. That was the story. Simple, sad, clean. But the man in this photo, whoever he was, did not look like a stranger. There was something about the shape of the jaw, the dark set of the eyes. Something unsettlingly familiar. And as Marcus stared at that blurred hospital crib in the background, the letter in his hand trembled, and a single drop of water slid onto the paper. He wasn't sure if it was from the ceiling or from his own eyes. But he did know one thing. Whatever story his grandmother had told, it wasn't the whole truth. And the drawer, finally opened, had only begun to speak. The night wouldn't let him sleep. Every time Marcus closed his eyes, he saw the hospital corridor, the pale walls, the crib in the background, and that man's steady, searching eyes that looked too much like his own reflection. By 2 a.m., the rain had stopped. The silence was thick enough to hear the electricity hum in the walls. He sat at the kitchen table, the open drawer's contents spread before him like evidence. The locket, the letters, the photograph, 3 pieces of someone else's life that were somehow sewn into his. He took a breath, opened another envelope. The paper inside was thinner this time, the ink paler. It was dated April 1971, written from the same sanatorium. Nadia, they tell me I'm improving, But the truth is I'm just learning how to keep quiet. They don't like questions here. I shouldn't even have this pen. If you've kept the boy, name him as you wish, but don't let him near this place. I see what happens to those who come back. The boy. Marcus blinked. He read the line again, his mouth dry. If you've kept the boy. He flipped the page over, looking for a signature. Just one letter. N. He didn't know why, but a strange thought pierced his chest. His grandmother had told him his father's name was David. Not Nikolai. Not Nazar. Not N. He stood, pacing the kitchen, each board creaking underfoot. The more he looked at the letter, the more his grandmother's image fractured in his mind. The quiet, smiling woman who baked cherry buns every Sunday, who never spoke of the past, who hated hospitals. Had she really raised him on a lie? The wind rattled one of the shutters outside. He flinched and laughed quietly at himself, nerves wound too tight. Then he noticed something strange about the letter's envelopes. They were numbered. Tiny digits in the upper right corner, written faintly in pencil. The one he'd just read was 4 of 7. There were 3 more missing from the sequence. He checked the drawer again, running his fingers along the felt lining. Nothing. He pulled it all the way out, and that's when he saw it. A false bottom. It wasn't obvious at first, just a fine seam running across the wood. He pressed at one corner, and the panel gave slightly with a creak. Inside, wrapped in a sheet of wax paper, were 2 more envelopes and a small cassette tape. His heart thudded once, heavy and hollow. He tore open the first hidden letter. The handwriting was more frantic now, uneven. If they've told you I'm gone, don't believe them. They move people. They erase names. I've seen it happen. St. Clement's is not what it claims to be. They call it a hospital, but it's a gate. One that never opens the same way twice. Marcus felt a chill run down his arms. A gate? He read on, eyes moving faster. The files are hidden under another name. Pritsenko was never mine. They gave it to me when they took the rest away. You'll know who I am when you find the truth about February 14th. That date again. He exhaled sharply, gripping the paper until it almost tore. The truth about his birthday? The cassette tape suddenly looked heavier, darker in the dim light. A label was peeling off one side. He squinted at the writing, smudged but legible. For M, play only when alone. The M could have been Marcus. Or Mother. He fetched his grandmother's old cassette player from the shelf, the one she used to play church hymns on. It hadn't been touched in years. He brushed off the dust, clicked open the lid, and slid the tape inside. The machine whirred. Then silence. And then, her voice. If you're hearing this, it means you've opened the drawer. Marcus's stomach clenched. I'm sorry, my love. I didn't want this for you. But blood keeps its own secrets, even when we try to bury them. I only hope you'll forgive me when you understand who you really are. A static hiss swallowed the rest. He rewound, pressed play again. Same thing. The words cut off abruptly, replaced by nothing but white noise. He sat in the dark, staring at the spinning reels, feeling as if the air itself had thickened around him. He had come here to mourn. Instead, he was unearthing a second life, hidden in the bones of a house, and maybe even in his own. And as the tape crackled into silence, Marcus realized something unsettling. The voice on that recording. It didn't sound like his grandmother at all. Morning came gray and brittle. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still looked washed out, colorless. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the same ghosts of paper and dust, the cassette player still there like a silent witness to the night before. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that voice again, soft, deliberate, familiar, but wrong. He'd grown up listening to his grandmother's voice reading bedtime stories, humming lullabies in the language of the old country. This voice on the tape had the same rhythm, the same warmth beneath the surface, but it was heavier. Older, as if someone had borrowed her tone and added something behind it, a kind of resignation. He poured himself stale coffee, staring at the condensation on the window, and muttered, "Who the hell are you, Enhritsenko?" The name felt foreign in his mouth, like saying someone else's secret aloud. He went to the living room and dug through the box of family papers the lawyer had left. Birth certificates, utility bills, a few photographs. Then, at the very bottom, a brittle folder labeled personal, keep private. It was his grandmother's handwriting, but shakier than usual. Inside were official documents, his own birth certificate, his mother's, and one more, older, folded and refolded so many times the edges were nearly transparent. It was a death certificate. Name, Nikolai Hritsenko. Date of death, February 15th, 1971. Cause, pneumonia. Complications following treatment. Place, St. Clement's Sanatorium. Marcus stared until the words blurred. Nikolai N. Hritsenko. So the man from the letters had died the day after his supposed son was born. His grandmother had kept the death certificate hidden, just like the letters, just like the tape. He reached for his phone, thumbs trembling. A quick search, St. Clement's Sanatorium, Kiev region closure, fire 1980s. Dozens of results, old newspaper clippings, fragments of urban legend. One article, scanned from an old magazine, stopped him cold. The Forgotten Ward, inside St. Clement's. The facility was originally built in 1952 as a rehabilitation hospital for soldiers and displaced families. Over the years, rumors of experimental treatments and unregistered patients began to circulate. When the building burned in 1984, records indicated far more patients admitted than ever officially released. Marcus exhaled, the breath shaky. He opened the next letter, one of the two still sealed from the false compartment. The handwriting was barely legible, words slanting across the page. If anyone ever finds this, please tell my son. He wasn't supposed to be born here. They told her it would be safe, but I saw what they did in Ward C. I heard them say Project Renewal. If you are reading this, Nadia, leave Kiev. Take the child and never bring him back. Promise me you'll never tell him who I am. There was no signature, only a smudge of ink that might have been a fingerprint. Project Renewal, Marcus whispered. The phrase meant nothing to him, yet it clung to the air like static. He folded the letter slowly, his mind spinning through half-formed possibilities. His grandmother had been 23 in 1971. His mother had been born in 1975. That made no sense, unless the child in the letters wasn't his mother at all. The air in the kitchen felt suddenly too thin. He stood and went to the mirror above the sink, staring at his own reflection. The dark eyes, the sharp jaw, the line of his mouth, all echoes of the man in that photograph. And yet, his grandmother had called him the only thing that saved me. He looked back at the cassette player, the reels frozen mid-turn. If that voice wasn't his grandmother's, there was only one other possibility. Someone who had lived through St. Clement's, someone who had known the truth about what was done there. He rewound the tape again, letting it spin until it clicked. The machine hummed softly, the tape trembling inside. He pressed play. Static filled the room. Then, faintly, another voice layered beneath the hiss. Lower, masculine, desperate. If you're hearing this, then it means they never found me. Don't look for St. Clement's. It's still there. Not where the maps say, but it's waiting. Then silence. Marcus leaned back slowly, the blood draining from his face. The tape wasn't just one recording. It was two, spliced together. Two people speaking from the same secret, years apart. And one of them might have been his real father. The GPS showed nothing. Just a blank stretch of forest where the sanatorium was supposed to be. Marcus drove anyway, the narrow road twisting between fields gone to seed, fog crawling low along the ground like breath from something sleeping. The world felt drained of color, the sky the same gray as the cracked asphalt. He'd barely spoken since leaving the village. The cassette player, the letters, the photograph, all packed in a box on the passenger seat. He caught himself glancing at it every few minutes, as if expecting it to move. The further he drove, the weaker the signal became. By the time the road narrowed to gravel, his phone had no service at all. The car's headlights caught signs long abandoned, wooden posts with rusted nails where placards once hung. Finally, after another bend, he saw it. A fence half swallowed by ivy, the paint peeling in long, pale strips. Behind it, the ruins of a large stone building leaned against the fog. Its roof had collapsed in places, the windows hollow and dark. St. Clement's. He parked near what was once the front gate. The air smelled of wet pine and burnt metal. As he stepped out, the wind shifted, and for a second he thought he heard voices, distant, rhythmic, like whispers carried down a corridor. But when he stopped to listen, there was nothing. Inside, the ground floor was a skeleton of tile and dust. He swept his flashlight across broken gurneys, walls scrawled with graffiti, and what looked like the remains of old filing cabinets, their drawers pried open long ago. He crouched beside one, brushing away the debris. A label still clung to the metal, Ward C. Archives. His pulse quickened. He dug through the rusted folders until he found one still sealed in plastic. Inside were photos, black and white portraits, dozens of them, patients staring blankly at the camera, each tagged with a code. One name stopped him cold. Hritsenko, N. The date, 1971. The man from the photograph. His own eyes staring back at him, only younger, hollowed by exhaustion. Someone had scrawled a single word beneath the photo in thick blue ink, renewed. A sound came from deeper in the corridor, a faint metallic clang, like a door shifting against its hinge. Marcus turned off his flashlight, heart pounding, listening to the silence that followed. The building settled again, groaning in the wind. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was walking just beyond the edge of his light. And then, from somewhere inside the darkness, a whisper so soft it almost wasn't sound at all. "You shouldn't have come back." Marcus froze, every muscle locked. The whisper had been close, too close. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't imagination. It had shape, a breath behind it, as though someone had spoken just over his shoulder. He turned slowly, flashlight trembling in his hand. The beam swept across rubble, graffiti, and the skeletal outline of a corridor. Empty. Nothing moved except dust drifting in the air. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. "Hello." His voice echoed through the ruins, flat and brittle. No reply. Only the faint drip of water somewhere deeper inside. He told himself to leave, to get back to the car, to sunlight, to reality. But something about that word on the photo renewed kept him anchored in place. The sanatorium wasn't just a ruin. It was a riddle left behind for him. He moved down the corridor, passing rusted doors marked with faded numbers. C2, C3, C4. Some were ajar, others welded shut by time. He stopped at C5, the only one still locked with a chain that looked newer than the rest. Someone had been here more recently. A metallic tag hung from the lock. "Property of Government Archive. Do not remove." He reached out and touched it. The tag was cold, cleaner than the door. The chain rattled faintly, as if something inside had shifted in response. Marcus stumbled back, heart thundering. "It's just the wind," he whispered, though the air was perfectly still. Then he saw it, etched faintly into the door beneath layers of grime. His last name, Hritsenko. He wiped the dust with his sleeve, uncovering more. Under his family name, a second word carved deep into the metal, infant. His knees almost gave out. Infant Hritsenko. Ward C. The same place mentioned in the letter. He felt the floor tilt beneath him, the world narrowing to a tunnel of noise and heartbeat. The realization hit slow and heavy. Whoever N. Hritsenko was, he hadn't been writing about a child. He had been writing to one. And that child had grown up to stand right here, staring at his own name carved into a locked door in a building that was supposed to have burned down 40 years ago. Behind the door came a sound. Soft, wet, like fabric dragging across tile. Then, barely audible, a second whisper, hoarse, broken. "February 14th. You were never supposed to leave." For a moment, Marcus couldn't move. The whisper was so faint he almost convinced himself it was memory, the echo of the cassette, the wind through the vents, anything but real. But then it came again, softer this time, like someone breathing words through dust. 14th, come back. He took a step backward, flashlight quivering in his hand. The beam trembled across the peeling walls, the rusted lock, the name carved beneath it. His name. He wanted to run, to vanish into daylight and never look back, but something deeper kept him there. Not courage, not curiosity, something closer to gravity. He lifted the flashlight again and aimed at the chain. The metal was newer, but the lock's body was old, corroded. He pulled the multi-tool from his jacket, his grandfather's, and wedged the blade into the gap. A hard twist, a snap. The chain fell, clattering against the tile. The sound seemed to echo far too long. He hesitated, hand on the door handle. Then, before he could stop himself, he pushed. The door groaned open, releasing a stale wave of air thick with disinfectant and rot. Inside was a small room. Bare walls, half-collapsed ceiling, a single iron bed rusted to its bones. On the floor, half buried under plaster dust, lay something square and black. A recorder. Marcus crouched, brushing it off. It was old, 1970s, maybe, but not destroyed. The tape inside was still intact, labeled in faint pencil, Hritsenko, patient log 7B. He turned it over in his hands, his pulse thudding in his ears. This was what he'd come for, wasn't it? The truth. He pressed the play button. At first, only static. Then a man's voice, tired, trembling, but unmistakably human. Day 72. Subject, Hritsenko, continues to show accelerated tissue recovery. No sign of rejection yet. If the infant survives the next week, it may prove the viability of renewal. Marcus's breath caught. Infant. Renewal. He listened harder. The mother insists on seeing him. We've moved her to Ward B. She doesn't know the transfer failed. No one leaves renewal without permission. The tape clicked. Then silence. He rewound, pressed play again, but the recording ended in the same place each time. A sharp cut, like someone had sliced off the truth mid-sentence. Marcus stood slowly, staring at the iron bed. The wall behind it had cracked wide, plaster flaking to reveal faint writing underneath. He stepped closer, raising the light. Scrawled in red, almost invisible under grime. They made you. For a second, everything inside him went still. Then something heavy shifted in the hallway behind him. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. And whoever, or whatever, it was, had no need for light. Marcus killed the flashlight. The world collapsed into blackness. He held his breath, every nerve pulled taut. The sound came again, measured, dragging, unmistakably human. Whoever was there wasn't rushing. They were looking for him. He edged back, toward the wall, his palm brushing the cold metal frame of the bed. The recorder hung heavy in his other hand, its tape still spinning silently. He could hear the faint scuff of boots on tile, the squeal of grit underfoot. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. For 3 heartbeats, there was nothing. Then, a small flicker of light appeared, a flashlight beam sweeping across the floor. Not security, he realized. Too small, too shaky. Someone like him. Hello. Marcus called, voice low but firm. The beam froze, then shifted slightly toward him. Who's there? Came a man's voice, rough with caution. Marcus hesitated. Just someone looking for answers. A pause. The light steadied, climbing up the walls until it caught his face. The stranger stepped into view, a middle-aged man in a weathered jacket, mud caked to his boots, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his cap. You shouldn't be here, the man said. They said this place was sealed. Marcus frowned. Who's that? The man's gaze flicked to the recorder in Marcus's hand. You found one, didn't you? The question landed too precisely to be random. What do you mean one? Marcus asked. The man sighed, lowering his light. There were 12 logs. We tried to recover them years ago before they buried the archives. Most were destroyed. We? Marcus pressed. I was a journalist, the man said. Back when stories like this got you more than trouble. Project Renewal. They called it medical rehabilitation, but it was genetic experimentation. Patients were renewed, reborn, whatever term justified what they did. Marcus felt the word infant echo again in his chest. The man's eyes studied him, narrowing. You're not press. You're not government. So what's your stake in this? Marcus hesitated. My name's Marcus Hritsenko. The flashlight slipped in the man's grip. Hritsenko, he repeated, the name barely leaving his throat. Then you're the one. Marcus stepped closer. The one what? The man took a slow step back, his face pale. The renewal child. The one who survived. Before Marcus could speak, a sharp sound echoed down the corridor, a heavy door slamming somewhere in the dark. Both men turned toward it instinctively. The stranger's voice dropped to a whisper. They never closed this place completely. Then the lights went out again, and the footsteps returned, this time, running. The running stopped as suddenly as it started. The 2 men stood frozen, the blackness between them alive with the sound of their own breathing. Marcus could smell dust, iron, and something faintly chemical, like the ghost of disinfectant still clinging to the walls. The journalist, he still hadn't given his name, clicked his lighter, a weak orange flame flickering to life. We need to move, he whispered. If anyone else is here, it's not by accident. They moved through the corridor together, the flame trembling with every step. The shadows bent strangely, stretching too long against the broken tiles. Marcus's pulse hammered, but he forced himself to focus on the man's words. You said 12 recordings, Marcus said. Why were they hidden? Because renewal wasn't a treatment, the man replied. It was a replacement. They experimented with genetic recovery, trying to regrow damaged organs, tissue, even entire systems. But it didn't stop there. They started testing reproduction, artificial pregnancies, children born from grafted cells. Marcus stopped. You mean clones? Not exactly. Hybrids. Reconstructed lives. The man's expression darkened. When the project collapsed, they burned the files. But some doctors ran, taking their research with them. We traced one to a Nadia Hertsenko, your grandmother. Marcus's heart seized. She wasn't a doctor. She was once. Before the fire. She took someone from here. Disappeared before they shut it down. Marcus stared at him. The air in his lungs turned cold. You think she took me? The man didn't answer. He pulled a folded photo from his jacket. An old black and white image of a woman in a lab coat standing beside a steel crib. Her face was turned slightly from the camera, but Marcus recognized her instantly. His grandmother. She worked in Ward C, the man said softly. The records list one survivor from the final experiment. Infant M. Hertsenko. No parents. No release form. Just one note in the margin, removed by handler before inspection. Marcus's hands shook. His grandmother's locket flashed in his mind. The engraved words, until the snow stops. The man pressed the photo into Marcus's palm. I don't know what you are, son, but whatever they started here, it didn't end. Before Marcus could respond, a low hum rose through the floor, electric, rhythmic. The building seemed to breathe, the dust on the walls trembling. Lights flickered once, twice, then came alive in a single corridor deeper inside. The man's eyes widened. That section shouldn't have power. Marcus turned toward the glow, the air vibrating faintly against his skin. From somewhere beyond the lit hallway, a door hissed open, like something mechanical had just woken up after years of silence. The hum grew louder as Marcus and the journalist crept toward the light. Dust floated like slow snow in the air, the overhead bulbs flickering in and out, casting the hallway in rhythmic flashes, alive, then dead, alive again. At the end of the corridor, a single metal door stood half open, a faint blue glow spilling from the crack. The journalist held his lighter low, his voice barely a whisper. There's no way this place should have power. The grid was cut decades ago. Marcus swallowed. Then what's running it? They stepped inside. The room beyond was cleaner than the others, untouched by decay. Stainless steel tables lined the walls, instruments gleaming under emergency lights that shouldn't have been working. A large observation window dominated the far side, though whatever it once looked into was hidden by frost and grime. On one of the tables lay a stack of sealed files, each stamped with the faded emblem of the Ministry of Health. The top folder bore a familiar name, Hertsenko, M. Subject log. Marcus reached for it, but the journalist stopped him. Wait. Look. A terminal on the far desk flickered, showing a cursor blinking against a black screen. Then words appeared, one letter at a time. Access confirmed. Welcome back, Dr. Hertsenko. The lighter slipped from the journalist's hand, clattering against the floor. That's not possible, Marcus breathed. She's dead. Unless it's not greeting her, the man muttered. Unless it's recognizing you. Marcus stepped closer. The terminal blinked again. Project Renewal/Subject 14, status, active. He froze. Subject 14, February 14th. The monitor flared brighter, revealing an image, grainy, infrared. A small, sealed chamber. Inside, something moved. At first he thought it was distortion. Then the shape shifted, unmistakably human. A silhouette pacing slowly, head bowed, skin pale against the cold light. The journalist stumbled backward. That can't be real. There's no one alive down here. But Marcus couldn't look away. The figure turned toward the camera. It was his face. Older, sharper, but undeniably him. For a heartbeat, the two versions stared at each other through the glass of time. Then the screen flickered, the image dissolving into static. From behind the frosted observation window came a dull thud. Once, then again, louder. The journalist's voice cracked. Marcus, we have to leave. Now. But Marcus didn't move. His reflection in the glass trembled, split by the frost. Two silhouettes merging and parting with each breath. And then, faint but clear, from beyond the glass, came a voice identical to his own. Don't let them take me back. The sound of his own voice coming from behind the glass froze Marcus in place. The journalist grabbed his arm, but Marcus barely felt it. His mind was already spinning. He took a step closer to the frosted pane, his breath fogging the glass further. On the other side, the shadow moved again, taller now, its outline sharp under the flickering blue light. The figure leaned close until only a thin layer of frost separated their faces. It spoke again, quieter this time. "They didn't finish me." The words seemed to vibrate through the glass, soft but deliberate. Marcus's pulse hammered. "Who are you?" he whispered. The shadow smiled faintly, a crooked version of his own. The one they couldn't erase. The journalist pulled him back. "Marcus, listen to me. Whatever's behind that wall isn't human anymore. That's what renewal was, duplicates. Failed reconstructions of lost patients. They were trying to bring the dead back." Marcus shook his head. "No, it knows my name. It." Before he could finish, the lights flickered violently. Somewhere inside the walls, a heavy latch released with a dull metallic clunk. The glass pane trembled, hairline cracks forming across its surface. The journalist backed toward the door. "We're leaving. Right now." But Marcus moved forward, drawn to the sound. The cracks spread, webbing out like veins until, with a sharp hiss, a square of the frost-covered wall slid aside, an access door opening automatically. Cold air poured through the gap. A man stepped out, or something wearing a man's face. His clothes were sterile white, his skin too pale, veins faintly visible beneath the surface. But the eyes, the same eyes that stared back from Marcus's mirror every morning, were unmistakable. He looked weak, trembling as he leaned against the frame, but his voice was clear. "They took my blood, my memories. Then they made you. You're the one that worked." Marcus's throat closed. "Worked?" The man nodded slowly, a faint, broken smile twisting across his lips. "You lived outside. I didn't. But you still feel it, don't you? The noise in your head when it rains? The cold that never leaves your bones." Marcus stumbled back, shaking his head, but the world seemed to shrink around him. The hum in the floor returned, deeper now, pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. The journalist shouted something. Marcus barely heard. The lights turned red, alarms echoing through the hall. And as the clone, his mirror, reached out a trembling hand toward him, Marcus saw his own scars reflected there, in the exact same place. "You're not me," Marcus whispered. "I am," the other said softly. "But only one of us gets to stay real." The sirens pulsed red through the room like veins of light. Dust vibrated off the ceiling as if the whole building had started to breathe again. Marcus's twin, or whatever he was, stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, his pale hand still outstretched. The journalist had drawn closer to the exit, his flashlight cutting frantic arcs across the lab. "We need to go before this place locks down." But Marcus couldn't move. His reflection, his echo, was staring straight into him. "I remember things you don't," the copy said quietly. "The first hours, the needles. They told me I wasn't viable. But she wouldn't let them destroy me." "Who?" Marcus demanded. "My grandmother?" The other nodded. "She saved both of us. She took you away, left me behind." He pressed a trembling palm against his own chest. "I was the trial. You were the result." The alarms cut out suddenly. The silence that followed was worse. Thick, electric, watchful. Somewhere above, a door slammed shut. The building was sealing itself. Marcus stepped forward. "If what you're saying is true, how are you still alive?" A faint smile touched the duplicate's lips. "Renewal was never about healing. It was about repeating. They made sure I'd keep living, inside here." He tapped his temple. "Inside you." Marcus's breath caught. He could feel it, the low hum that had haunted him for months, the cold ache in his bones every time it rained. "No, you've always felt me," the other whispered. "In dreams. In memories that aren't yours. You're not broken, Marcus. You're shared." The journalist swore under his breath. "This is madness. We're leaving now?" He grabbed Marcus's arm, but the clone's voice hardened. "You walk out, he dies. We're connected. One body, two blueprints." Marcus jerked free. "Stop lying. I can prove it." The man stepped into the light, eyes gleaming with an eerie calm. "Look at your right wrist." Marcus hesitated, then pulled back his sleeve. The faint scar, a thin, pale crescent he'd never been able to explain, matched perfectly with the wound on the other man's arm. In that instant, Something sharp bloomed behind Marcus's eyes, like a burst of light and sound colliding in his skull. He stumbled, gasping. Images flashed, metal tables, a baby's cry, the smell of antiseptic and smoke. When he blinked, his mirror was suddenly closer, too close. "Don't fight it," the clone murmured. "We were never meant to be two." The room tilted. The hum rose to a piercing whine. Marcus felt his pulse twist, his vision double, the world bleeding into itself. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed everything was his own face, smiling back at him, as if it finally understood something he didn't. He woke to silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the kind that waits, heavy and listening. The red emergency lights had died, leaving only the gray dawn filtering through the cracks of the ruined ceiling. Dust floated like ash. The lab was still. Marcus pushed himself up. His head throbbed, as if the world had split open inside it. The other man, the copy, was gone. Only a dark smear of blood trailed toward the corner where the frost glass window had shattered. He reached for the recorder he'd dropped earlier. The casing was cracked, but the tape inside still intact. His hands shook as he pressed play. Static. Then a voice. His voice. Day 82. Subject 14 shows a stable cognitive doubling. The imprint transfer appears successful. We may have created not a cure, but a continuation. Marcus froze. It wasn't the clone's voice. It wasn't the doctor's. It was his own, recorded decades before he was born. He stopped the tape, heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "That's not me." But the room seemed to disagree. The computers hummed again, softly this time, monitors flickering back to life. One screen showed a string of text scrolling slowly. Subject 14, survival confirmed. Conscious link stable. Primary host, M. Hritsenko. Marcus stumbled backward, gripping the desk. No, 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 no. His reflection flickered on the dark glass beside him, but it didn't move when he did. It blinked a second too late, its lips twitching into a half-smile. "You can't kill what you are," it whispered from nowhere and everywhere. He spun around. "Where are you?" "Inside. Where I've always been." The lights flickered. For a moment, the entire room looked doubled, the walls rippling, splitting, two realities overlapping. One sterile and white, the other burnt and broken. He felt like he was standing in both. The whisper came again, right beside his ear now. "We were one consciousness split to see if the soul could grow twice. She saved you, Marcus. But she didn't destroy me." The cold air tightened around his lungs. "What do you want?" "To finish it. To be whole again." He staggered toward the exit, but every step felt heavier, like walking through water. His vision blurred, every surface reflecting two versions of him, one living, one waiting. And then, through the noise and dizziness, a sound broke through the haze, a soft ring, echoing faintly from his jacket pocket. His phone. One single bar of signal. A new message on the screen. From unknown number. Text. "She's still alive. Come home." The glow of the phone screen painted Marcus's face a sickly blue. His fingers trembled as he stared at the message. "She's still alive. Come home." It didn't make sense. His grandmother had been dead for weeks, buried, mourned, gone. The journalist was nowhere in sight. Only his lighter lay on the floor, its metal still warm. Marcus pocketed it and looked at the message again. No signal, no reply option, just those four words pulsing faintly on the cracked screen. A soft voice spoke behind him. "Home isn't far." He spun around, flashlight raised. The room was empty, but the whisper seemed to hang in the air like mist. His pulse raced. "Where are you?" The voice came again, closer now. "You know the way. She left it for you." Marcus's breath came fast. The phone buzzed again, vibrating so hard it nearly fell from his hand. A new message appeared. Location shared. A small map blinked to life on the cracked display. A red pin. He recognized the coordinates immediately. His grandmother's house. He staggered toward the door, pushing past the echoing corridors. The sanatorium seemed to change around him, the walls warping and breathing like skin. The hum in his skull grew stronger with every step, synchronizing with his heartbeat. He could feel him, the other Marcus, moving inside his head, whispering in rhythm with his pulse. "You can't hide from what you were made for." He stumbled outside into pale daylight. The forest swayed under a slow wind, and for a moment, Everything looked almost normal again, just an abandoned ruin swallowed by time. He climbed into the car, turned the key, and drove. The road blurred beneath his tires. Every few miles, his reflection in the windshield flickered, his expression shifting just slightly, not matching the way his jaw moved. Sometimes he caught it smiling when he wasn't. Hours later, the house came into view, the place where everything had started. The curtains moved in the upstairs window, though no one should have been there. He parked, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. "If this is you," he muttered to the voice in his head, "we're ending this tonight." He stepped out, the wind carrying the faint smell of lilac and old wood polish. The front door was already open. Inside, the clocks were ticking again, all of them, perfectly synchronized this time. And from the kitchen came a familiar sound. The creak of her chair, the scrape of a teacup on porcelain. Then her voice, soft, trembling, alive. "You took long enough, my boy." Marcus froze in the doorway. The smell hit him first, boiled chamomile and dust, the scent of his childhood. The same sweater hung on the coat rack, the same cup of tea steaming on the oak table. But the woman sitting there, her back to him, was impossible. "Grandma." His voice cracked. She turned slowly. Her face was pale but calm, her eyes a shade too bright, her smile fragile as tissue. "You came back," she whispered. "Good. I wasn't sure you'd find the messages." He took a step closer. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was," she said simply. "In one place, not in another." He stared at her, words caught in his throat. "What does that mean?" She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit. You need to understand before he does." Marcus hesitated, then sat. The air in the kitchen felt thick, humming faintly like the lab beneath St. Clement's. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured him tea. When they began renewal, they said they could save soldiers, repair what war took. But it was never about saving. It was about replacing. Marcus's heart thudded. "You work there?" "Yes," she said softly. "And I broke their rules." Her eyes glistened. "Your father, Nikolai, died during the trials. They were going to copy him, make a version without his mind. I couldn't let them. So I took the data, the embryo, everything I could carry, and I made you." Marcus's stomach turned. "You made me. I grew you," she whispered. "Raised you to live a life he never could. But I couldn't destroy the first one. The incomplete version, they kept him there. I thought he'd die. I prayed he would." The humming grew louder, the lights flickered. "You mean him?" Marcus said. "The one I saw." She nodded. "He found the network again. He's awake. And now he's coming here." Marcus stood abruptly. "Then we have to go." She shook her head. "It's too late to run. The link between you two has already formed. He'll find this place the way you did, by instinct." Thunder rolled outside, rattling the windows. She reached across the table, grasping his hand. Her touch was cold, but her gaze fierce. "There's a key in the desk. You know which one. What I locked inside. It's not treasure. It's the only way to end this." The wind howled through the open door, slamming it against the wall. And from somewhere beyond the garden, between the trees, came the echo of footsteps, slow, steady, and unmistakably human. The footsteps grew louder, crunching gravel, breaking twigs. Marcus's pulse matched the rhythm, every sound a hammer strike against his ribs. His grandmother's grip tightened. "You must find the key," she whispered. "It's in the desk where you began. Drawer below the first." He turned toward the hallway, heart racing. "What is it? What does it do?" She hesitated. "It ends the connection. But it ends one of you too." Lightning flashed through the window. For an instant, he saw movement outside, someone standing at the edge of the garden path. Tall, motionless, drenched in rain. The other him. Marcus bolted down the hall. The house felt smaller now, suffocating. The ticking clocks synchronized with his heartbeat, each second tightening the air. He reached the old walnut desk, the one that had started everything, and dropped to his knees. The bottom drawer was jammed, swollen from age. He yanked it open. Inside lay a black case about the size of a book. His name was engraved on a metal plate. M. Hritsenko, Final Protocol. Behind him, a voice echoed softly through the hall, his own voice, carried by the storm. "You shouldn't have come back here." He spun. The figure stood at the far end of the corridor, dripping water onto the wooden floor. His twin's eyes glowed faintly in the half-light, reflecting like an animal's. "Stay where you are," Marcus said, his voice trembling. The other smiled faintly. You can't threaten a mirror. He stepped closer, each footfall slow and deliberate. You think she made you human because she loved you, but you're just the final draft. Marcus gripped the case tighter. Then what are you? Version 1, the copy said. And I want what was taken from me. He lunged. Marcus stumbled backward into the study, the case nearly slipping from his grasp. The rain roared against the windows, the storm spilling light into the room like shattered glass. The clone's hand clamped around his wrist, ice cold, impossibly strong. Marcus's vision blurred, the world flickering between two images, his grandmother's face, the hospital corridor, the sanatorium door-marked infant. He managed to wrench free, slamming the case onto the desk. The latch popped open. Inside was a single syringe filled with a shimmering silver fluid and a folded note in her handwriting. One blood, one life. Choose which. He looked from the syringe to his double, both of them breathing hard, both identical, both terrified. The clone whispered, "She made us both broken. Let's fix it. Together." And then, with a sudden motion, he stepped forward, grabbing Marcus's wrist, forcing the needle toward both their arms at once. The syringe hovered between them, trembling in their joined hands. Rain hammered the windows like fists. Marcus felt the cold metal against his skin, his double's pulse beating in sync with his own. "Let go," Marcus gasped, trying to pull away. But the other only smiled, eyes glassy with desperation. "We were born from the same blood. We'll end the same way." He pressed harder. The needle's tip nicked Marcus's wrist, just enough to draw a thin, shining thread of red. The clone's eyes widened as if transfixed by it. "Do you feel it? The pull. It's calling us back together." Marcus shoved him backward. The two crashed into the shelves, books and photographs spilling across the floor. A frame shattered between them, an old photo of his grandmother holding a baby. Him. Or maybe not. The edges of the image were burned, the child's face blurred into white. The clone staggered up, snarling. "You stole my life." "No," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "You were never meant to live this one." He grabbed the syringe again, his mind flashing through his grandmother's words. "It ends the connection. But it ends one of you too." The air felt charged, humming like the sanatorium walls. He could hear a low tone under everything. The same deep vibration he'd felt since the beginning, now pulsing in perfect rhythm with both their hearts. The other Marcus stepped closer, his voice almost pleading. "You don't understand. She made you from me. You're the echo, not the original." The words hit like a blow. For a moment, Marcus faltered, doubt sliding through him like ice. What if he was right? What if he was the copy, not the man? The clone saw the hesitation and smiled. "There it is. You feel it too." But then Marcus remembered the letter. "Your father never knew how to open it. Perhaps you will." The truth wasn't about who came first. It was about who chose. He raised the syringe. The clone lunged. They collided, both hands on the plunger, their breaths ragged, faces inches apart. Two identical storms clashing in one body. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. The needle pierced. Silver flooded their veins. For an instant, pain became light, searing, electric, absolute. Both screamed. The world split in two, one bright, one dark, and Marcus felt himself falling through both at once. Then everything went silent. When the light dimmed, only one body remained standing. The syringe lay empty on the floor, a single drop of blood sliding down its side, catching the light like mercury. The silence that followed was unbearable, too still, too absolute. The rain had stopped, the storm exhausted, but the air inside the house still vibrated with the echo of what had just happened. Marcus stood in the middle of the study, breathing hard. His vision shimmered as if the world hadn't decided which version of itself to keep. The room pulsed once, light bending, then steadying again. He looked down. The other him lay motionless on the floor. His skin had gone pale, almost translucent, veins faintly silvered beneath the surface. For a heartbeat, Marcus thought he saw the chest rise. It didn't. The needle glinted beside the body. He reached out and picked it up, his hand shaking. It was warm. The liquid that had burned in his veins moments before was gone, absorbed, vanished. The humming in his head, the ever-present vibration, was gone too. Silence, at last. He looked at the body again. The face was his own but softened, almost peaceful, as if the fight had drained all the anger away. Marcus knelt beside it and whispered, "You're free now." He didn't know if he was talking to the copy or to himself. The lights flickered once, then steadied. He heard footsteps, slow, steady, coming from the kitchen. He turned. His grandmother stood in the doorway. She looked impossibly frail, one hand pressed to her heart, the other clutching the frame for balance. "It worked," she said softly. "One of you remains." Marcus rose. "You knew it would kill him." She nodded. "It had to. The serum couldn't sustain two vessels. You were linked. The same mind split in half. When he woke, he began to pull you back into him." Tears burned behind Marcus's eyes. "So which one am I?" Her expression broke. "The one who chose mercy." He didn't know whether to feel relief or horror. The weight of what she'd done, what they'd done, pressed on him from all sides. She stepped closer, touching his face with trembling fingers. "I didn't create a monster, Marcus. I created a chance." He caught her hand, held it for a moment, then glanced at the body again. "He was me." She nodded once. "He was what they made. You are what you became." Lightning flashed far off in the distance, silent now, only light without thunder. The house creaked as the storm finally broke apart beyond the valley. Marcus turned back toward the desk, toward the empty syringe, and for the first time, he felt the absence of the hum inside him. His mind was truly his own. But when he looked at the reflection in the dark window pane, for just an instant, only an instant, he saw both of them standing there. By morning, the world felt hollow. The rain had dried to mist, clinging to the windows like a veil. Marcus moved through the house in silence, collecting what remained. The empty syringe, the torn letters, the cracked photograph of his grandmother holding the blurred child. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the ticking of the clocks, felt too loud now, as if the house itself were asking what he'd done. His grandmother sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, the light thin and gray across her face. She looked smaller somehow, like a shadow of the woman he'd known. "Is it over?" Marcus asked quietly. She nodded without looking up. "Yes. The network inside you is shut down. The renewal link is gone." He studied her. "But you, how did you survive?" Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "I never left this house. Renewal was never just a lab, Marcus. It was an idea. It learned to rebuild itself through memory. When the fire came, I burned my body, but my mind lived on. In you. In here." She touched the side of her head, eyes shining faintly with tears. "When you came back, I remembered enough to wake." The truth hit him like a slow blade. "You're not really alive." "I am for as long as you see me," she whispered. "And now, you can let me go." The clocks began to desynchronize again, one by one, their uneven rhythms spilling through the rooms. A breeze pushed through the open doorway, carrying the scent of wet lilac and earth. Marcus knelt beside her, the way he used to as a boy when she read him stories. "I thought I was looking for you," he said, "but I think I was just trying to remember who I was." "You did," she said softly, "and that means you're ready to forget." Her hand grew lighter in his, her skin cooling, fading like a dream losing shape. The blanket folded in on itself, and then she was gone. Only the faint imprint of her presence in the chair, her teacup still warm. Marcus sat there for a long time, staring at the steam twisting upward into the still air. The hum in his head was gone. The second heartbeat, gone. And for the first time in his life, he felt alone. Truly, painfully alone. He rose slowly, walking to the desk one last time. The drawer was open, its secret spent. Inside, the letter she had left him all those days ago still rested under the lamp. He unfolded it, his eyes catching on the last line written in her delicate hand. "When the storm ends, the mirror clears. Do not fear the face that remains, it is yours." Outside, the first sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the old house in pale gold. Marcus closed the drawer gently, and this time, it stayed closed. The morning sun slid across the valley, turning the wet grass into fields of glass. For the first time in days, the air felt alive again, free from that low, invisible hum that had haunted every breath. Marcus stood by the window, watching light move across the floorboards, and realized the silence no longer frightened him. He'd spent the night cleaning. The blood was gone, the syringe burned in the fireplace, the broken glass swept away. The other body, his shadow, his echo, had been buried behind the lilac bushes under the same tree where his grandmother used to read. He marked the grave with no name, only a flat stone. One life, one memory. Inside, the clocks had fallen still. Every single one. He hadn't stopped them. They had simply stopped on their own, all at the same moment, as if the house had finally taken its last breath. He sat at the desk where everything began, running a finger along the grain of the old wood. The letter, now folded and worn, rested beside the cup of cold tea. He could still hear her voice in his mind, soft, tired, loving. "You're the one who chose." He thought about the man in the sanatorium, about St. Clement's and the faces behind the frost, about all the versions of himself that could have existed, that almost had. The thought didn't terrify him anymore. It humbled him. He opened the top drawer one last time. Empty, except for a small brass key, the same one he'd found that first night. He turned it in his hand, feeling its weight. Then he smiled faintly and placed it on the windowsill, letting the morning light catch it. Outside, the mist was lifting. The fields beyond the house shimmered with dew, alive with the hum of insects and the far-off caw of crows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder muttered, but it was only weather now, not a warning. Marcus took one last look around the room. The smell of chamomile lingered faintly in the air, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw her silhouette in the chair by the window, gentle, proud, at peace. Then the light shifted, and it was gone. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The latch clicked softly, final and sure. For a moment he stood on the porch, breathing the clean air, the sun warming his face. Then he whispered, not to the house, not to her, but to himself, "Whatever I am, it's enough." And as he walked down the overgrown path, the old house watched him go, quiet, whole, and finally free.